All right, I am so excited to do this live. If you are a director, VP, a senior individual contributor with more than 15 years of experience, and you feel stagnant in your career, this is for you. It's been a while since I've done a live. I've been very exhausted. It is summer. I've been working out. So many exciting things going on for me. But I miss doing these lives and I wanted to pop in because I know that there are people out there who are stuck in their career. And I want to talk about the whole career stagnation thing because I feel that talking to thousands of professionals and working with over 1,000 clients, it is a big problem when you feel, if especially if you are a high achiever and you start feeling restless in your job, you start feeling like undervalued because you know that you're already operating at the next level, but you're not being compensated at the next level. Maybe you're not being given the title that you deserve. Maybe your company went through a reorg and you've been counting on a promotion, but because of the reorg, you feel like you're going backwards or you're stagnant and staying where you are. Look, I completely understand the feeling of being stagnant because I have been there in my own career. And I'm going to share a few stories of how I felt stagnant and how I overcame it. So, when I worked at a consulting company, I was literally operating at senior manager level. Okay. I was working with multi-million dollar clients, engagements, and I was doing all the work. But because of the fact that the organization structure was a certain way, and what I mean by the organization structure, which was a certain way, basically what I mean is that the client, because in consulting, you're staffed on an engagement, and depending on a client need, you can take on a higher level role because if they promote you, then they're going to have to bill the client more, and the client may not want to pay that much, right? They may not have that need. So you're sort of at the mercy of what types of projects the company brings in. And so I was getting frustrated. But at the same time, I had so much trouble leaving because during the time that I was there, we had the financial crisis where all the banks were collapsing. And so it didn't feel smart for me to just leave. Okay. It just felt like I didn't have options. And so the number one reason that I find executives basically feeling trapped in stagnation is because of lack of optionality. When there are no options for you out there, when you feel there are no options for you out there, you know that you are in a bad relationship with your organization. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you need to think about your basically professional relationship as a relationship. It's almost like a romantic relationship where you feel it isn't right, but there's just so much sunk cost that you feel like you should just stay, right? It's like if you have kids together or I don't know, you've invested so much into the relationship, you've grown older together, you start telling yourself, "Oh, maybe I'm too old to date someone else or maybe it's too late for me." And it's kind of the same thing when you're in an organization. You start questioning, well, man, I spent like 10 years or 15 years in the same company. Who's going to want me? I'm going to have to relearn new things, or there isn't enough demand in the market for me, or the economy is not doing well. But here's what costs you when you have that thinking. Okay. I'm going to just anchor this to studies out there around people who are stagnant and what that does to you psychologically and mentally. So there was a story of a woman. She was a lawyer and she was tempted to basically retire. And when she retired, she felt stagnant, right? She wasn't challenged. Like us human beings, the way we are wired is we always need to be in a space where we're creating where we are being productive. And when that feeling is gone, we become stagnant. If you don't feel challenged, you become stagnant. If you don't feel, if you're starting to be like on autopilot, you get stagnant. And the scary thing that happened with this lawyer is when she retired, she ended up with Alzheimer's because of the stagnation. And so, biologically, as human beings, we're not meant to feel under challenge. We always want to solve problems. And so, this is why it's important for you to constantly feel challenged in your career and grow. Otherwise, you end up with depression. I've seen people who got diagnosed with depression because they're feeling stagnant in their career. They ended up with health issues. Your level of motivation goes down, and then you end up going to work, and eventually your performance drops. But if your performance doesn't drop, then, like I said, all of these other issues get created. The other thing that happens that I've observed when, especially if you are at the director level and you're staying in a role where you're coasting, it becomes much harder for you to actually move up. The longer you stay and you become stagnant, the more questions you get from recruiters around, well, if you've been operating at the next level, why did you stay? What happened? Why didn't you move up? Right? So, this is why it's very dangerous to not do anything about it, even if you have the golden handcuffs. I will tell you that because I was at that consulting company at the same level for 4 years, I got asked many questions by employers when I left. It made it a little bit more complex for me to actually move to the next level because of that. And so I really encourage you to consider looking at other options, because the longer you stay, the harder it becomes for you to leave. Okay, now let's talk about the big hurdle that you all face in terms of not wanting to leave, which is lack of options. There's a fallacy in terms of, hey, the market is very competitive. I shouldn't even try. I should just be grateful. I should stay where I am. I want to ask you a very simple question, okay? Think about your peers who are at better, who are in better options or environments. Do you feel that you are less qualified than them? Like, truly. Like, even some of you might even be reporting into a boss who is less qualified than you, but because of the nature of the organization structure, maybe you came in after them, or there's no place for them to move up. You're overqualified for your role. And that is a very demotivating thing to experience, to have to report into someone who is less qualified than you, or to have peers who are in positions that are higher than you, or to know of friends and peers who are in other organizations and they are making more than you, even though you are more qualified. And so that's the thing that you need to think about. Why can they have those opportunities and not you? The reason is because they are confident in selling themselves. They have no shame in bragging about what they've done. So, how do we fix this? One of the things that I do with my clients is help them identify their career sweet spot. So, I had a client who basically quit because she was so frustrated. She was feeling stagnant. But then what ended up happening was it was taking her very long to find her next opportunity. And when we sat down together, it was because she was not clear on what her superpower is, what her niche is. And so her and I worked together to dial that in. And then we rebranded basically her experience to align with where she wants to be instead of her past. And that's another mistake that people make, is when they build their brand, when they talk about their value, they talk about it from the perspective of what they've done before and not where they want to be. And so you're not connecting the dots. And yes, you may be very articulate, you may be a great communicator, but because you have been in it for so long, it's really difficult to read the label when you're inside the jar, right? And so a lot of the clients who come to me, it's not because they're not great communicators. I mean, you wouldn't be an executive if you weren't, right? It's mostly because their experience is very overwhelming. It's a mess in their head. And they just want the accountability to work with someone who's going to look at all of their experience and map it out and structure it for them so that they can have a very clear narrative when they're having conversations with hiring managers. The third thing is motivation. When you are coming home exhausted and emotionally charged because you're not even enjoying your job to begin with, you're upset because your boss, because of all of the unfairness. Maybe he or she, they're micromanaging you. Maybe you're just so burnt out from being undervalued. The last thing you want to do is look for other roles, right? You just want to, lie down, watch Netflix, or be with your kids. But the thing is, sometimes you have to go through that short term inconvenience if it means that in the long term, you're going to have that higher compensation that is going to allow you to better provide for your family, to hire maybe help at home to free you up during the weekend so that you can be around your kids instead of cleaning the house, right? So, human psychology, unless you have an appointment where you have to actually answer to someone, you're not going to do it on your own. This is why a lot of people, in order for them to be successful, they have to hire a personal trainer, a nutritionist. It's not because you don't know what to eat most of the time. It's not because you don't know what exercises to do. It's because you need that accountability. You need to have that person to answer to. When you have an appointment locked into your calendar every week to speak to a coach about your job search, guess what? You're going to end up putting in the work. You're going to end up looking for the jobs. And when I work with clients, it's not about let's just fiddle around with your resume and rewrite it, or let's just teach you how to look for roles. Although I have to say that some executives, because they've been in their organization for so long, they don't have any job search strategies. They're trying to implement, a job search strategy that's applicable to someone who's entry level or mid level versus executive. But even with that, assuming that you do know how to search for jobs and do all of those tactical things, it's a bigger issue than that, to be quite frank. Your ability to articulate your value and see it is so distorted because, again, you've been inside the organization for so long. And building a brand is not just, yes, it eventually transfers to your resume and your LinkedIn profile, but it's more about knowing how to tell that story. And again, finding that story and knowing which story, the right story to tell, it requires conversation with someone on the outside. It requires an external perspective. This is why you, as an executive, when you are launching initiatives, right, you hire external consultants, you hire vendors, right? It's the same thing. So that's basically the end to end. When I was in, consulting and I was feeling stagnant in my career multiple times, yes, part of it was because I've been in those organizations for so long, it made it harder. But also the other factor was the toxicity. I dealt with a very toxic boss. And I think sometimes we don't want to admit that the environment is toxic. We make excuses for it, just like how you make excuses for an unhealthy relationship. And how you can get out of that is by acknowledging that what's going on is not healthy. And the first step is to hire someone who helps you see that, someone that you can talk to about it. Because if you don't, then again, you're not going to be held accountable. You're just going to keep accepting what's going on. I have a client who is a director of product, and she was telling me all these stories about this VP that she's reporting into who's quite toxic, like literally micromanaging her, um, constantly telling her that her direct reports are not putting enough hours, like her team is being measured by the number of hours they put in versus, you know, the the business results that they're creating. And so she was sharing with me all these conversations, and at some point she was justifying what was going on because she was so terrified of looking externally. And it took our conversation to help her realize her value. And because of that, she's interviewing right now, even though she was telling me that I wasn't getting interviews before. So that's the power of having someone on the outside. It's not about templates and resumes and things like that. It really is like very much conversational, very much mindset driven. I've been doing this for 6 years now, and it's going to be 7 years next year in April. And if I were to trace back all of the client success stories to what made each single one of them successful, it wasn't because they had a pretty resume. And yeah, sure, like I do all these things with my clients, but the big thing, it was the mindset, them believing in themselves and setting a goal. I mean, it seems very like simple, but with everything in life, you need to set a goal and you need to be in a program that is structured, that creates that accountability for you to reach that goal. Think about any big goal in your life, you know? For example, university, even getting a degree or an MBA, you had to be in a structured program in order to accomplish it. So it's the same thing with landing a role. Landing a role is not a simple goal, it's a big goal. It's pretty much a change in your life, right? And so you need a system, you need you need a supportive system and a structured system in order for you to accomplish that. You need someone that you can talk to who has a system that keeps you from experimenting and throwing things at the wall. And a big thing is that you also need to be surrounded by peers who are trying to reach that same goal with you. And one of the big advantages of my program is that I have designed it so that there is amazing peer support of executives. A lot of executives, complain and tell me about how they don't have time to network and how they don't really know that many people in their network. And the way I've designed it is that you are going to have that network, a supportive network. I mean, imagine a room full of highly ambitious people. What do you think is going to happen? So the mindset is a big thing. The goal setting is a big thing. The structure and having a clear path is a big thing. Think of all of the transformations that you've led. You didn't just wing them, right? There was a system, there was a structure, there was accountability. Except now you have to apply this to yourself, but it's very difficult to apply this to yourself and navigate this alone, right? All right. So I'm opening up my calendar for anyone who is feeling stagnant. This is just a simple conversation. I will diagnose what's going on with you. We're going to figure out what's blocking you from achieving your goal. I call it a career diagnosis. This is not a coaching call where we spend hours, right? I'm not going to be able to understand your entire career in 15 minutes, but the purpose of the call is for us to understand at a high level what's blocking you. What's blocking you from moving up? Whether it's moving up from senior individual contributor to director, from director to VP, VP and beyond. I'll ask you a few questions, and then we'll understand what's blocking you. And then we're going to create a plan to help you get there. And if the plan is exciting and you feel that you need my help to implement it, then we can talk about how that would work. Otherwise, you're still going to have a plan. And you're not going to be wasting your time, on fixing the wrong things, right? And it's also about realizing what's possible for you, which is amazing. All right. So if you want to book the career diagnosis with me, it's very simple. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I am going to share my screen and show you how to book the career diagnosis with me. Let me see if I can do that, if LinkedIn is going to allow me to do that. So annoying sometimes, LinkedIn. By the way, if you're listening to my live, whether it's the replay or you're just listening to it right now, I would really love it if you tell me where you're tuning from. Just drop that in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning from. Okay, I don't know why my, okay, there we go. I finally was able to access my LinkedIn page. So what you want to do is you want to access my LinkedIn page and you want to click on book an appointment. And it's going to take you to this basically page. Scroll all the way to book your career diagnosis and then fill out the form. Okay? It only takes 2 minutes. It helps me understand what your goals are. That way we can make the best out of the 15 minutes. All right. Thank you so much. Please give this a like if you found this helpful. It really helps me know who's listening because it is very weird for me to do these lives when I'm just talking to myself. And it's also going to help someone out there who is feeling stagnant, has absolutely no clue what to do, to have that opportunity to chat with me and create a plan. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday night. Enjoy the beautiful weather. I know here in Toronto, it's crazy. I'm going to just say the temperature in Celsius because like I'm not Fahrenheit savvy, but it's 25 degrees. This week it's going to go up to like I think 37 degrees Celsius, which is insane. I'll still take that over winter though. I will still take that out over winter. Okay. Hope you all have a great night. See you later. Bye.